Good day, Mitakayaris, and today I wish to speak to you of truth. There are many faith structures in this world, more than I'm certainly aware of, but of the major religions, the major faith structures, there is nothing like Christianity. It is predicated, it is founded on compassion and forgiveness and redemption and humility. Every religion demands of its adherents humility to God, but Christianity is distinct in that God was humble to us. He came down to experience everything that we experience and to make a connection, to become so incredibly accessible. And forgiveness? Oh my, as he hangs on the cross, he prays, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Forgive the Romans who crucified him. Forgive the Gentiles and the Jews in the crowd that demanded that crucifixion. As I was saying last week, compassion and forgiveness for those being manipulated, but not for the manipulators, which in this case were the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Religious sects that certainly knew better, but they pushed their knowledge of being godly and leading godly lives aside, because what they were focused on was their status and power in society. There are other religions, of course, but I don't believe that just because you're adherent of another religion that you've automatically earned a sentence to hell. Whom are we to say the ways to God? In the Gospels, Christ says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. But whom are we to say of the many paths they may be to the Father through Christ? Also in the scripture, vengeance is mine. God judges, not us, God. And God will unite and connect to his people however they need to. So that needs to be through some other faith system, so be it. Now there's a guy on YouTube I've been following, Red Pen Logic is the name of his channel, and if he ever hears of me, which I doubt, he'll probably take me to task because I don't think what I just said is biblical. But the idea that all these people who aren't Christian are going to hell is absurd. And the idea itself is ungodly. Now, Christianity also says that, God becomes man. And there's one other major religion that I know of, the Druze, D-R-U-Z-E. I say major, 2 million people out of a world of 7 billion. But their God-made man was a bloodthirsty son of a gun. Not Christian at all. In fact, we all know the stories of the gladiatorial games in ancient Rome and the Christians being thrown to the lions. People came to see that. That was valid entertainment. And the reason it fell out of favor was because of Christianity. Christianity taught and teaches kindness toward our neighbors, and our neighbors being everybody. All those old movies that feature people being concerned about other folks, especially not in their family. Yeah, all those movies. Historical fiction. Didn't happen. Christianity introduced the idea of compassion toward everybody, introduced that to the world. So, adherents of other religions, as far as I'm concerned, when they show that level of compassion and forgiveness and redemption and acceptance, to me, they're being contaminated by Christianity, and I say that in a good way. There are people, adherents, and even other Christians who are going to take me to task for that too, but that's what I believe. God is God, and he will relate to us as we need to. A neighbor of mine recently told me that God couldn't incarnate into human flesh because the human flesh can't stand the divinity, and the human flesh would just explode or disintegrate or something. And yet, this person is studying Jewish scripture. So go back to the Bible, go back to Genesis. Jacob wrestled with God. Now, some people say an angel, but these are the same people that tend to be fundamentalists and take scripture at word. He actually wrestled with God. It says that in scripture. And if your whole argument is that God wouldn't do this wonderfully redemptive thing for all of humanity because it's impossible for him. Oh my, poppycock. So the other thing I want to tell you is that I want you to realize that God changed his mind. The first prophecy that biblical scholars point to about the coming of the Christ is ascribed to the time of King David. And that's ascribed to probably 1,000 years before Christ. I say maybe probably because all these Old Testament biblical figures, there really isn't much in the way to go of historical evidence for any of them. There are things that happened at times other than these historical moments, and a lot of playing loose in fact with history and biblical history. But that's all well and good because there's so much written down in Hebrew scriptures that the history is fluid and it is not reliable. I guess you could even say not reliable narrators when it comes to actually what happened. So as to the point as to when these people lived and how long they lived, we really don't know. But the best estimates going for David, 1,000 years before Christ, that's when the prophecy started showing up. But Abraham, 1,000 to 2,000 to 3,000 years before that, and no mention of any prophecies. And then, of course, of all the many years before that, whether you believe in Adam and Eve or evolution, I believe in evolution. You talk about a plan. God takes hundreds of millions of years to enact this plan. We go from amoeba to fish to ape to human, and along the way gain souls, patience, and power. Oh my God, that makes God so much more awesome in my eyes, in my heart. Words fail me. But so you have all these prophecies, but for the longest time there were no mention of any prophecies. So in other words, God changed his mind. It astounds me that I'm the only person I know of that even sees this or speaks of it. God changed his mind. To me, Old Testament God is a warlord. You step across the line, whether you're from another unchosen people or from the chosen people that shows disrespect to God, and you could end up dead. And then Christ comes along and says, time for a new covenant, time for new rules. Love, compassion, redemption, humility. So this is, we talk about free will. This is God's free will. He's ahead of everybody and everything else by huge chasms. No one even comes close to his power and authority. So if he wants to change his mind again, he can. But he doesn't. He is staying true to that new covenant. So that means there's brand new rules. I suppose God could make it so that this hardness and brutality of the Old Testament God with the compassion and redemption of the New Testament God could live side by side, but it's beyond our comprehension. So in this world, it's either one or the other. And he decided to go from the hard brutality to the redemptive compassion. He decided that, and he continues to decide that, and he continues to uphold that covenant every single second, which makes what he does for us all the more remarkable, all the more, again, words fail me, absolutely sensational. So let me just finish by saying Happy Easter and peace. 4 fingers.